Today on the Modern Motherhood Podcast, I'm Julie Lyles Carr, and I have what I hope is going to be really helpful for you in this very interesting season we're living in. But I also hope these are things that moving forward, when we get all the way through this situation in which many of us are sheltering at home, your kids are now home, you are working from home, your spouse may be home, all the things. I have 11 tips for you today on surviving homeschooling and working from the house. So let's dive in. Let me start by saying, first of all, I do want you to go to allmomdoes.com and get connected with All Mom Does on the socials, because you're going to need this kind of community. You're going to want the resources and the experience and the wisdom, and then people who are just going through the same things you're going through, you're going to want that. So go to allmomdoes.com and on the socials, All Mom Does, because that's going to be a fantastic hub for you to also trade other ideas, to find people who are going to have compassion for the various things that you're experiencing, to find a laugh along the way, and lots of heartfelt prayers and nutrition for your soul. All right, let's dive in. 11 tips for surviving homeschooling and working from home. So let me start this out by saying, many years ago, we started homeschooling. We were homeschooling when it was weird. I'm not saying that it's still normal in our culture, but it's a lot more accepted. But we started in when it was really strange and weird. And it was just something that I wanted to try. We were in a season of life in which we had some opportunity to be more available to some friends of ours who were in the entertainment industry, and their schedule was all surrounding a homeschool schedule. And so we decided to jump in and try. My oldest daughter was best friends with one of the daughters of this family, and we decided that this could be a cool thing to give it a try. So we started homeschooling Madison. She was in the 3rd grade. We had a really good public school experience. She had awesome teachers, but this was something we were going to try for a season. And then it ended up being the way that we have done things ever since. And I've worked from home for a very long time. I started out when Madison was a baby doing some different little jobs, and I always continued to do voiceover work and radio work. And it's just continued to grow through the years through my writing and pastoring at my home church and all the, different clients that I do marketing things for, and on and on. So it's been our norm for a while. But I do want you to know this, even as normative as it is for our family, the events of these last few days have definitely created new challenge and new things to think about. I mean, the kids that I still have at home that were homeschooling, and for myself working from home, we had our rhythm down, right? And all of this has changed that. My husband being home, working, my older kids who still live here at the house but have been working out of the house, who are now coming back and schooling in the house for their college degrees, and also working and teleteaching, several of them, for the businesses that they're part of. It has been really interesting. We also are navigating new norms, even though this is something I've been doing for quite a while. So if you're really new to this experience, I want you to understand that I have tremendous sympathy and empathy for how cataclysmic and seismic this is in your life. And if you're someone who felt like, we'd been homeschooling a while, or I'd already been officing from home, yet all this feels really new and strange, I get it. This is a completely different environment than any of us have ever experienced before. So here are some survival tips for making it through with this. The first one is this. Your house is probably going to be a bomb, and it's okay. This is one of the things that was so hard for me to get hold of when I first started schooling and working from home. I had tremendous expectations that I set upon myself about how I wanted the home environment to be. And the reality is, left to my own devices, I prefer things to be tidy. I feel like I think better. I feel like I operate better. But if you were to show up at my house on any given day in my real life, the house would be somewhat upside down. At least several rooms would be upside down. We occasionally have a time during the week where things are slightly put back together. But here's the deal. When you are both schooling and working from your home, that means your home never gets a break, ever, because you're there. And when you're there, you are utilizing that venue, if you will, all the time. So All the mess, all the bathroom trips, all the eating, everything that usually happens at your child's school. And then there's a professional custodial team that comes in and cleans all that up every afternoon and evening. Well, that's not happening at your house. And for those of you who have been officing away from the home and you are accustomed to closing things down at 5 o'clock, 5:30, taking that commute home and then arriving at your house that has not been used all day, well, that office that you've just commuted from, same thing. You've got a pack of professionals who have been dealing with that office space in the evenings after you're gone, and you are used to coming to a house that has not been utilized in that same way. So, yeah, it's probably going to make you itch a little bit. It could be really challenging, and you're going to have to determine the level to which you can stand it if things are a little crazy. But I do want you to grab onto this truth. The house is going to be stretched and utilized and dirtied and crazier than you're used to, and that's the norm. Can I encourage you to just take a pause, take a beat, and just go, okay, you know what? It's a season. It is a little messy. Why don't you just decide the bare minimum standard for what makes you feel okay? Like, can you handle if maybe the beds aren't made and there are a bunch of shoes at the bottom of the stairs? Is that okay? Can you handle there being a lot of homeschool materials and computers and markers and paper on your formal dining table for a while? Can that just be okay for right now? I just want you to take some of the pressure off of yourself that you may feel for how you're maintaining a home during this time. Second tip, there are many different ways to learn. You know what? I really put myself through it when we first started homeschooling. I kept trying to replicate the classroom environment. In my head, I thought that that must have some kind of efficacy, that it must somehow be the best way to do things because it was how schools did things. And there are some great reasons for the way that school days are organized the way they are and scheduled the way they are, but they're predicated on an idea of having 30 kids in a classroom. And so this is not at all a criticism of how typical classroom schedules are set up and how the ways that things are taught are set up. This is to say, just because it's best in a classroom environment does not mean it's the best setup for your homeschooling experience. So here are some ways that I mean that. For some of your kids, they're going to do well gathered at the table with you as you are working through work stuff on your computer and they're doing school stuff. And that I have done that with my kids for a long time. There are seasons where that has been really, really good for my kids. But for some of your kids, they really would learn best laid out on the floor on their stomach in front of their device, their digital device, if they're accessing teaching from their teachers or they're going through a curriculum online. Or even they may do better laying on the floor and reading that book that you want them to read. See, that's part of what's really a little bit of a challenge is we can get categorized when we feel so uncertain about having to navigate and manage our children's educational journey. We can get trapped in thinking that it has to be a certain way, that it has to happen from this time to this time. It has to be at a table in a chair with these particular materials in front of them, that you may feel the need to convert your dining room into like some major school room in which you've got learning posters on the wall and timelines and charts and all kinds of things. Listen, if that works for your family, great. But if really the goal at the end of the day is just to work them through some learning opportunities throughout the day, it doesn't matter what it looks like. So give yourself permission, give your kids permission to understand this truth. There are many different ways to learn. There can be online platforms that are extremely powerful. There can be hands-on experiences that are extremely powerful. There can be literature-based experiences that are extremely powerful. Please hear me. I have done every imaginable curriculum with my kids. We have done it all. All of them had value, and all of them missed the mark in certain places. There's no one absolute theory of everything when it comes to your children and their learning. So just embrace that it doesn't have to look like the school classroom. You're not responsible for trying to copy and emulate the school classroom experience. It's going to be different, and that is fine. Third thing that I want you to get a hold of is everyone is on the same schedule right now, and I'm using air quotes to say schedule. You know, one of the fears that I fought a lot in my early days of homeschooling was I was very, very aware of what other people's kids were learning in their private school experiences or public school experiences, and I felt a whole lot of needing to prove myself and prove that my kids were on target, on time, doing all the same things. One of the things that this season for all of us does is it's a great leveler. What I mean by that is, if your kids have been commissioned back to home for school right now, if that is the decision of your mayor or your governor, listen, that means everybody's on the same schedule. It's not that there are kids still going to school and getting way, way, way further ahead than your kids, or, you're having to prove that your kids can do it in the midst of making a really different educational decision. This is one of the great freedoms, I think, for people right now when it comes to schooling and working from home, is that everybody is on the same ad hoc schedule. There's going to be so much grace for this, and that is incredibly powerful. Just know that, remember, you're not the only woman out there who's having to juggle and navigate all this. There are going to be nuances to your situation that are different. There are going to be some challenges that are different. But any of us who are part of healthy environments, healthy work environments, healthy school systems, there's going to be a tremendous amount of grace. And if for some reason there's an employer or an educational system that is putting tremendous pressure or expectation on you, just identify that as a point of toxicity and begin to ask yourself, is this really where you need to be and the experience your family needs to be having? Because this is one of those moments where things are exposed for what's really at heart. What's really most important right now is that you are getting learning done, not perfectly, not exactly the way it would be done in the classroom, and you're getting work done, not perfectly, and not at what most people would say is the formality of what's most professional. But who cares? We're still moving the boulders forward, and that's what counts right now, and everybody is experiencing the same kinds of needs to change, adjust, adapt. We're all there. So let's have tremendous grace with each other and also with ourselves and our kids. Fourthly, this is a great opportunity to see the when and how of how your child learns best, and also the when and how of how you work best. For a lot of us, we have been grafted into, we've adopted schedules that came from outside ourselves. So one of the things that I identified very quickly with some of my kids is they were best at working through math earlier in the day. And then I have kids that were best working through a subject like math later in the day. And initially I thought that it was some kind of failure on my part as a mom trying to guide them through their curriculum. And then I thought, wait a minute. I know better than this. One of my degrees is in psych. I do have some kind of base of understanding of the way that the brain begins to pull in information and utilize it. And one of the things that we know to be true is people have such different times of day that they are better at certain tasks than others. I mean, let's face it. Do you have a morning bird in your family? Somebody who just gets up and is so joyous and excited? And you have somebody that takes them a lot longer to wake up. It takes them longer to get going in their day. Both are very valid approaches to life. That is how somebody came wired. So for some of us doing more detail work, for our kids having to work on things that require a different region of the brain, a different set of skills, some of us are at our best earlier in the day, and we can get it knocked out in a way that is far more efficient. We master it a lot faster, and we just work through the thing in a much more efficient way. For some of us, later in the morning, after lunch, after a nap, and I will tell you, I have kids that there is no question. They do their best learning after dinner. They just do. And sister, I fought this for years. I really kept thinking if I can just segment all these things and really make it this way and on and on and on. And then I began to go, wait a minute. What is my goal here? My goal here is to get them to a certain level of mastery on certain subjects. And if one of the things that we can utilize is a time frame that is best for them, why would I not do that? Here's another thing too that I learned for myself and for my kids. A couple of my kids learned best literally when I had them on our treadmill, our home treadmill. I am not kidding. I would just struggle with them. They'd be on the floor rolling around. They'd be at the table just going bananas. I would try to seclude them to their room where they would have a more, private learning experience. Maybe that was better. They wouldn't be distracted. Oh, no. What I finally learned is that some of my kids need to be moving in order to learn. And the breakthrough that was when I allowed them to do that. I would literally put them on the treadmill with their book on the stand in front of them, or with an audiobook going. Let's not miss that. Audiobooks are really important. And so there are all kinds of things that you can do that really leverage the way you work best and the way your child learns best. And this is an opportunity for you to actually get to see what could be best for your child in this season, in this moment. Number 5, do not discount or assume it doesn't matter. Let me tell you a really important part of your child's education: learning basic life skills. I don't know if you've seen some of the studies that I've been looking at very closely. We have some of our Ivy League colleges. I am talking Harvard, Yale, places like that are pushing the pause button and are saying, we need to actually back up a step. We need to have a class when these kids are arriving at our Ivy League schools. These kids who have been the top shelf of everything in their high schools, in their ACT and their SAT scores, we are having to take a pause and go back and really actually put together courses to teach them basic life skills. How to run a washing machine, how to wash dishes, how to set up a bank account, how to write checks. I mean, come on, friends. Listen, a really important part of education in general is making sure that when we launch our kids into the world, they know how to do some basic stuff. My daughter, who lives in Chicago, recently told me, Mom, I am so glad that you insisted that we know how to deep clean. That you made us do the kinds of chores that taught us how to clean a toilet, that taught us how to scrub out a refrigerator, the things that at the time I'm sure she thought were a little bit mean. But she told me, Mom, I'm with all these people in their late 20s and early 30s who truly don't know how to do that. Everything was outsourced, or the parents handled all of it and they were never taught that. I would encourage you, what you're going to find usually is that you're going to zip through a lot of the assigned curriculum that your schools are giving you early. I know that sounds strange, but we are told by researchers that generally the amount of curriculum that kids can actually get through in a 2 to 3 hour time period is the same amount of what it takes them to get through in an 8-hour school day. So one of the things I want you to think about is if you find yourself zooming through, don't think you're doing something wrong. Heavens no. That is really what it's about. When you're not having to deal with the group dynamics, when you're not having to deal with changing classrooms, when you're not having to deal with certain breaks and going to lockers and the social aspect of being at school, what you find is that you're going to be moving through curriculum a lot of times much more quickly than you would have thought. And if that happens and you have kids that are now twiddling their thumbs or you're trying to limit some of their time on devices, whatever, this is a great opportunity for you to make sure that you have been able to intentionally go through with them a lot of the life skills that they truly need, in addition to the multiplication tables and the spelling words. But hey, this is a chance for us to make sure there's a generation who goes to college knowing how to do a lot of the things that are #adulting. Which leads me to tip number 6. The clock doesn't mean a lot. Now, I know for some of you working for home, you have bosses who are saying, I want to see you in front of the computer from this time to this time. I know some of you are going to have schools who are saying, we want to make sure kids are available for instruction for this time to this time. But when I say the clock doesn't mean a lot, this is what I want you to hear loud and clear. One of the great grand secrets to the level of productivity that I personally have, people say to me all the time, how do you get done everything you get done? And I've said for a long time, and now I have people contacting me, clients through a lot of the business dealings that I have, people that I minister to, people who have watched our homeschool journey through the years. They're contacting me in the wake of their experiences over the last week, and they're saying, oh my goodness, I get it now. Because you do become more productive for a lot of us in the home environment. I love the social experience of being in an office. My kids love the social experience they have in their one-day homeschool co-op. We all embrace it. It has great, great value. But at times, we have confused all the socializing that goes on in those experiences as part of the curriculum map, as part of the work productivity map. And for a lot of us, it's not. Now, yes, there are those jobs that are very much predicated on what you can produce in 1 hour, in being on site in a place for an hour, a lot of service-based, a lot of retail, a lot of medical. 100%, those hours and the clock mean a lot more in that setting. But for a lot of us in our work environments and in our school environments, the clock really has more to do with sort of an out there kind of decision that was made on what best facilitates some office expectations, what facilitates best some school expressions. There's really no magic to a 5-day-a-week, 8 to 4:30 school day. So don't get so caught up in the clock. If you have some flex here, utilize it. And if you're getting done with your work and you feel like you've been professional and honoring and you've gotten it done, great. Call it a day. If your kids have blown through and they've done well with their multiplication tables and reading so many pages and watching that history doc and completing the thing that their science teacher wanted, and you're done right after lunch, embrace it. Don't beat yourself up over the clock. Which leads me to tip number 7. If you're a schedule person, great. If you're not, celebrate. Some of you are going to want to embrace routine. You know it's good for your kids. You know that if you keep you on a certain heading, you're going to do better. Great. Do it. But if you're not a schedule person, this is a great time for you to play with some of the options that might exist out there for you. If you've never been a morning person, well then don't feel like you have to be one now. If your school and you're working through curriculum needs to start at 10, would you embrace that as a gift of this time? If you have the kind of flex in your work where you can actually rearrange your day and you know that you would be best doing certain things at a certain time, embrace that. Because here's the thing that's interesting. Yeah, we can put out a timeline, a timesheet that has very specifics to it in terms of a schedule, or we can feel like we're a little more ollie oxen free out there. But here's the deal. There is still a rhythm and a schedule that will develop even when you embrace a freedom away from a schedule. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I'm telling you this, I've lived it. There is a rhythm that developed through our days when I released us a little bit from the tyranny of a schedule, because let me tell you, for several years in our homeschool, we were running by the clock all day long. I mean, I was on top of it. And then with new babies and a big move that we had come in the middle of all this great routine I'd put together, I had to learn afresh how to be flexible with all of it and make all of it happen, even at times that were not, quote unquote, typical. And so what I began to find is even when we were going off-road, when we were going rogue, there was still a rhythm that developed. So don't be afraid to let a new rhythm develop. Tip number 8, homeschooling and working from home will make you face some things about yourself. It's very exposing. And I'm laughing at some of the memes, but I'm also hoping that there is a moment of self-awareness. I'm seeing some memes of moms just going off on we need to be paying teachers more, and which of course we do. But just some of the ideas of, this is what's driving me crazy about my kids, and this situation is making me nuts, and da-da-da-da-da, and they're going through and they're talking about all the things. Listen, if a routine and a schedule is the only thing that's keeping you patient and kind and intentional, a routine, a schedule is simply a tool. And it may be time to dig into what's underneath that hair trigger frustration, that need for everything to line up really neatly, that place where you can only handle so much at so much and on before you blow a gasket. Listen, yes, We have feelings, we have emotions, and they are heightened right now, and validly so. I am not trying to talk you out of that at all. I am dealing with stuff on my side too. Here's what I do think we have to know. If there is an undercurrent that with a schedule and a routine missing, all of a sudden there is a fury or a frustration or a snappiness that comes with all of this, this may be your opportunity with God to sit down and get that sorted out. What's been masking it in this season, prior to this season, is the routine and schedule. But the core issue is always there. Here's another thing you're going to have to face about yourself in the work from home environment, the homeschool environment. With some of that distraction and social out of the way, how is it really going with your relationships at home? I mean, for real. Because one of the things that's happening right now for a lot of people is if the way they've been managing their home life is by being away from their primary people a lot, this is a big moment of revelation about the true health of your family. And I don't mean that to burden you. I mean, look at this diagnostically. Look at this as an anthropologist saying, I'm looking at this group of people. How are we managing things well? And here's something that's really cool. Teletherapy has been around for a long time, but this is an opportunity. You now may have a time, a place, a pause to actually pursue getting some help for your family in a teletherapy format. I want to encourage you to do that. This is an awesome moment for you to invest strongly in your relationships with your kids, with your work environment, with your partner. This is the moment. Tip number 9, your kids getting to see you work is a phenomenal, great thing. It's interesting to me, as long as I've worked from home, there are still moments where it's kind of startling to my kids to see me on stage or see me on a broadcast or to hear me on a radio station, because they get in this rhythm where they just see me in my office on my computer, and it's kind of like me seeing them on their computers gaming. Like sometimes they forget that there's a career embedded in this. There's a passion for this work that I do, and it allows them to see me afresh in a new light. And these are kids who actually on the daily see me work from home. They need that reminder every now and then. For your children, their ability to see you engaging in the work that you do in a work from home environment is so powerful. It allows them to understand that they are important and critical in your life, but that you also have these other roles. And here's something that's really interesting. You know, decades, generations ago, there was something called apprenticeships that were really robust. That was how you entered a field professionally that you wanted to go into. You had these apprenticeships, and these apprenticeships started when kids were young. They would work alongside the blacksmith, or they would work alongside the baker. And yes, of course, it violated all kinds of child labor laws, but the value of the thing is what we've lost. We have so segmented our worlds. We have our work world that is away from our children, and our children have a school world that is away from us. And it makes it really difficult at times for us to understand and have compassion for each other's positions in the world. I believe it is incredible when our kids do have times they go to the office with us, they go into work environments with us, they go on a business trip with us. This is the ultimate go into the office business trip, project-driven moment for our kids to be able to observe. It is part of equipping them for adulthood. And it also helps them understand that while we adore them, they are not the center of everything. We have other roles and responsibilities in our lives. It's a great, beautiful thing for them to see that. Tip number 10, this is a fresh way to establish fresh boundaries with your kids. That is one of the great, powerful things that I come out of these years of experience in working from home and working and doing school at home that I didn't realize was a huge benefit. My kids had to learn that there were going to be times I was on a conference call, there were going to be times that I needed to be head down, and they were going to have to put what they thought was an immediate need or an immediate desire on pause for just a little bit. And can I tell you, that's an awesome thing to have to learn to do. It's one of the things looking back that I can see is a real strength with several of my kids, is they know how to push the pause button and wait for the other person to finish. They know how to hit the pause button, and they know the difference between something that is truly urgent and something that's important. So, as you can imagine, we have rules around my house that if I'm on a conference call, if I'm recording something, if I'm on a broadcast, hey, if you're bleeding heavily, okay, then you can interrupt me. Like, that's really important. That would be a call that should come through. But if it is something that can wait 10 minutes, it can wait 10 minutes. It's really important. There's an entitlement that comes on kids when they interrupt at any moment. And I know there are parents who say, I want my child to know that they are so important in my life. I want them to know they can always interrupt me. I get it. I love it. But I want to tell you, it is so critical for kids to know certain boundaries. And this is an opportunity to lovingly set some of those down. To say, when I'm on a conference call, you need to do this. If you need help with that math problem, get working through all the math problems you can do, and we'll go back and pick that one up. You know, in a child's psychology, what they really want is more of that immediate. They find a place of frustration. They find something they want to communicate, and they want to be able to do it in that instant. And that's not wrong. Their temporal lobes are not developed initially to the place where that's easy for them. But part of the way that we help develop that temporal lobe that allows people to take a pause, that allows people to put off a certain level of satisfaction in something, is by practicing it. And with this natural boundary put in place of you needing to get work done or you needing to help another child with their spelling, it's going to help your other children learn how to establish a boundary and honor it and observe it. And then let me leave you with this tip, number 11. There isn't a right way to do this. Girlfriend, please hear me. There is not a solitary right protocol to any of this. There's a lot of improv that's going to be happening in your world, and that is okay. There is not one single right way to juggle both the demands you have in your work life and now having these kids home and trying to figure out what to do. There is not a single right way for you to determine how to juggle the schedule and fix the things and also try to get to the grocery store before all the big lines come up and get your kid through their multiplication facts. There is not going to be a single right way for you to get that project accomplished and at the same time make your children feel fully seen and loved and there. It's going to all be slightly messy. The borders are going to be a little bit murky at times. There's going to be bleed over, and that is okay. I don't have every single secret or a methodology that is going to be the perfect way. The only methodology I know is to say, you have been graced and given what you need in this crazy moment, specifically for the children that God has entrusted to you and the work that He is having you steward. You can do this. You can. And you can take some of these 11 tips and apply them as they fit. You can ditch the ones that you don't think are a good fit. And that's really the right way to do all this stuff. It's not about one singular method. It's about a mindset. We are all doing the best we can. We are all moving forward. We're all figuring this out together. And that mindset of giving ourselves grace, that mindset of giving ourselves mercy when we mess it up, that mindset of extending compassion and grace to other people, even if you don't understand the way they're doing it. You may be someone who really believes a rigid schedule must be kept. Don't judge your sister who's going a little more free range with this. You're both doing it the right way. That's what I think that comes out the other side of this that is going to be so gorgeous, is the willingness to extend that kind of mercy and grace to each other. I want to leave you with this one little story. A couple of years ago, I took the kids during spring break. I had not been a great mommy. I had worked really hard. I had some kind of deadline going on, and we just didn't do much for spring break. I just kept my head down. We kept going. And toward the end of that week, my kids said, we haven't done anything special for spring break. And they were 100% right. We hadn't. And so I said, you know what? Here's what we'll do. I am guessing that all the spring breakers in our region of the country are at beaches and a lot of the parks that we have and all that kind of stuff, hiking trails, all that. We're going to go completely opposite. We're going to go over to Houston and we're going to go to the Museum of Natural Science over there because we will be the homeschool geeks who go to a museum during spring break instead of hitting the usual hotspots. I thought this was a brilliant idea. I got over to the Houston area. We got up early one morning. We drove over. We got to the Houston area, and there in the museum district is one of the most intense traffic circles you have ever seen. It's like 4 or 5 lanes across. It has multiple points of entrance and exit on this traffic circle right in the heart of the museum district. And I could not believe the level of traffic. It was stunning. I'm talking about bumper to bumper, packed, inching along. Let me explain how bad it was. This traffic circle, along with all of the little side roads that could have gotten us over to the museum in a more timely fashion, were all so packed that we spent 2 hours navigating all of this. The other issue we got into was there was no parking. I mean, the parks were jam-packed, and there are several parks right around the museum district, and I just assumed, oh my goodness, okay. So finally, providentially, a parking spot opened up. I was so thankful. And I zoomed in there just like I was a New York City taxi driver. I mean, like aggressively got that parking space. Okay, phew. And then we go hiking up to the museum because we had to park quite a ways away. And I thought, oh man, the minute we enter that building, it's going to be calm because this is spring break and people are not taking their kids to an educational museum for spring break. They're out doing other kinds of things and going to the beach and going to go hiking and going to go to amusement parks. And so I was really congratulating myself on what a great idea this was. We opened the doors to that lobby and it was shocking. There were lines back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, crammed into that lobby, people trying to get to the ticket booths. The museum was already jam-packed full, and they were only allowing a certain number of people in at a time because the museum was so full. It was going to be hours and hours before we could ever even hope to glimpse any of the exhibits. And I stood there in that lobby with these kids I had drug with me from early in the morning, now driving around the Houston area for 2 hours trying to even find a parking space. Now we've hiked all the way in to this museum that I have hyped up really big, why this would be superior than going to, say, Six Flags. And we can't even get in the place. And let me tell you, in my flesh, I wanted to throw a complete hissy fit. But my kids were watching me. And thankfully, God intercepted my heart before I reacted out of the frustration of things being so different, the frustration of this investment I had made in getting us over there being different, my projection of how I thought that my kids were going to respond to all this and how disappointed. And thankfully, God intercepted my heart. I understood in that moment that He was calling me to be a leader for my kids in the unexpected. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And sister, this is what we did. We went to the gift shop. Yep. We spent about an hour and a half in the gift shop. Fascinating place. All kinds of merchandise that was connected to some of these major exhibits that we weren't going to get to see. An entire section of gifts having to do with Egyptology because of the mummy exhibit they had going on. An entire set of merchandise that had to do with dinosaurs because there was a whole section of the museum we weren't going to be able to see that was exhibiting dinosaur remains. I mean, it was... So in this weird way, the gift shop was sort of a walking tour of some of the things that we were not going to get to see in the exhibits. And I let each of the kids take a portion of the funds I had set aside for our entrance to the museum, and they bought a particular little tchotchke to go home with. And all of them have actually treasured those little tchotchkes. So the twins each got like a bug that was set in resin to make this brooch, like a big beetle that was set in this hard plastic and their necklaces. And I was laughing to myself recently because they still have those on the doorknobs to their closets in their rooms, of all things, from 2 years ago. I ended up purchasing for myself a super classy set of 2 coffee mugs. They are black coffee mugs with the T-Rex emblem on the front of them etched in with the name of the museum on them. And you know what mug I've been drinking out of, my decaf, the last several days? Those gift shop mugs. And here's why. I want to remind myself that in all of this new and change and frustration and accommodation and improv that I'm having to do both with homeschool and work, even though I've been at this game for a long time, So I can only imagine the level to which you're having to engage in all of the improv. I want to keep reminding myself that even though we're not going into the places that we expected to be going into, even though things aren't turning out the way we invested in them to go, we can still choose to make a trip through the gift shop, the gifts of this experience, and choose some things to take with us. What do you want to take with you from this experience? I think you're going to learn some things about your kids you didn't know before. Some of you are going to learn that their teachers are saints. Some of you are going to learn that you've got a really tender-hearted kid who maybe the learning environment they've been in has not been the best for them. Some of you are going to be stunned that your kids actually learn spelling words better while they are standing on their heads. And that's a true story, by the way. Some of you are going to learn that when your kid looks like they are not listening to you at all, and they're playing Legos and they're twisting in their seat and they're doodling, they're actually picking up on everything you're saying. Some of you are going to learn within your own work environment that it's not so much the job. It's that you aren't able to do the job in the time frame that actually is best for you, and you're shocked at how productive you can actually be at 9 p.m. to midnight. And so maybe it's going to precipitate a conversation with your boss that's going to be better for everybody, including you and the level of productivity you can have. There are gifts in the gift shop of this dumpster fire of a museum trip. There really are. And I want to encourage you to find them, bring them home with you, and treasure what they've taught you. Hey, please connect with me on the socials. I'm Julie Lyles Carr on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook. I love to connect with you there. If you have a minute, go to allmomdoes.com or allmomdoes on the socials. And would you do me a big favor? Would you say a huge thank you to Donna and to Rebecca? They are the team that helps get this out every week. We have been in a lot of communication, helping support each other, and they are keenly feeling a lot of the pressure of this season. They are both in the Seattle area, and as you know, the Seattle area has been one of the places that's ground zero for everything that's gone on. So they have been under all the restrictions a lot of the rest of us are feeling now for even longer than we have. So go give them a word of encouragement, and please do this as well. Would you please go subscribe and leave a 5-star rating and review and leave us a comment. I want to be able to share what you're learning and gleaning from all this. It helps other people find the podcast. I would be so appreciative if you would do that. All right, we'll be here next week with the next episode of the Modern Motherhood Podcast. Love you so much. Thanks for listening, and go check out All Mom Does.